Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wattier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Scott Wattier. I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good evening, sir.
Hey, how are you, Scott?
Well, Tommy, I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Got a few things going on though, as you probably do also.
Yes, it has been a little bit crazy lately. Got a few things going on out there.
Yeah, and that's really why we wanted to do a little different episode today with everything else that's going on around us. You and I are very similar in the mindset that we can control what we can control. So we're going to talk about what we can do today by using fasting and some other things we'll go over in just a minute to give us some calmness and bring some calmness about what's going on around us with the closures and the coronavirus and everything else that goes along with that.
Yeah, we have some scarcity, some fear. We're feeling it even when we are trying to stay, kind of out of it. You can't really avoid hearing the message. It's kind of everywhere. And, things are just now starting to shut down. They're talking about quarantines and they're talking about, things not being available. Restaurants and bars here in Houston are shutting down at this point. So it's kind of unavoidable to get the message. And we wanted to see what we could do to optimize the situation, take back a little bit of control, simplify things, and really kind of tie it in. I mean, this is really at the core of why we started this Fasting for Life thing.
Yeah, it comes down to the control and the simplicity too. So, I'm not one we don't have cable. We had DirecTV for the football season, but we don't have cable. TV's not on. I don't listen to the radio or the news. I go and find news when I'm interested to find news, but I'm not typically one of these people that's constantly, I protect my input, so to speak. So, in this situation though, there's a definite need to be aware of what's going on and also make sure that you have a plan in place, with the way things are moving. For instance, San Francisco, 3 weeks, they're going to be you're only supposed to go out for food and for medical visits.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously San Francisco, California, a lot more exposure than where we are here, in our county, tens, hundreds more cases. But, I want to throw a disclaimer in here too, is we are not immunologists, right?
Mm-hmm. We're not government agencies.
We're not the CDC. You have, your degree in physiology and psychology. Mm-hmm. I have my degrees in biological sciences, anatomy and physiology. And we have gone through some, a deep dive on some information that's backed by research and that we feel will give you, the listener, everybody out there, what it's given us, which is some of that control. And you never want to be operating out of an area of fear. When you make decisions based on fear, you run out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like when you make financial decisions based on fear, typically those decisions don't work out right. So right now,
money.
Yeah, exactly. The mass hysteria, and there's cause for concern, of course, but what can you do on a daily basis that can boost your own ability to increase your safety, increase the safety of your loved ones, and also control what you can control? And that's something that, we live by. So, just
Feel,
looking at, go ahead,
feel.
Tommy.
I was going to say, feeling prepared goes a long way. So even just a little bit that you can take control over, you can feel like you know it's going to have a positive impact, and you know you'll be set up better if things continue to go on the quarantine direction, or if it's a little tougher than it was last week to pick up your favorite item from the grocery store, whatever the case may be. A little preparation goes a long way to kind of clear the mind and keep you focused on whatever else you have going on during the rest of the time.
Yeah, and so we're going to start talking about fasting, because this is really where the jumping off point was for us. And, looking at the benefits of fasting and what it can do for the immune system is really where we want to begin, because the immune system is what we're seeing with this that's allowing so many people to be infected but not become a fatality. It's the people that are in the immune depressed situations. And diabetes, type 2 diabetics specifically, have much higher incidences of heart disease and much higher incidences of respiratory infections, which this is turning into, which is causing the majority of the fatalities in the more metabolically imbalanced, the less healthy, the more immunocompromised, so their immune system is suppressed, it's not functioning at a higher rate, which is the older population. So how can we prepare ourselves? Well, one of the easiest things we can do, Tommy, and you were talking about this fasting study and how it has the effects on the reversing the aging effects on stem cells.
Yeah, there's some fantastic basic research studies done on fasting, specifically prolonged fasting. We're talking 48 hours plus, specifically studied on a couple of studies where 48 hours to 120 hours. But anything greater than 48 hours has a huge protective benefit and regenerative benefit of bone marrow stem cells, which are the key to a healthy functioning body with healthy blood. And that's the main negative effect of aging and chemotherapy, as far as prevention of diseases, being prone to diseases, and decreased immune function as well. So if we can keep the bone marrow healthy and keep the blood stem cells pumping out and regenerating at the appropriate rate, then we've done a huge service towards increased immune function and keeping the overall body healthy.
And it was really cool because the news article that referenced the research article, the USC article, said that fasting triggers stem cell regeneration of damaged old immune system. So it was like, oh, okay, so I've got an immune system that's been through, a couple rounds. Let's say it's a boxing match. You're in round 12. Well, the cool thing is this allows you to kind of go back a few rounds and maybe make a couple of different changes. So I know it's an odd analogy, but it's, you got an immune system that's been through some stuff, and now you're going to be able to increase the function of the immune system and increase the regenerative properties. So right there, huge win. And now that is specifically the 48-hour mark. So looking at it from an intermittent fasting perspective, intermittent fasting has just a litany of benefits in terms of shutting down the inflammatory pathways, which decrease your immune function. So when we're looking at fasting, I know you and I, from a practical perspective, are thinking, okay, well, that's going to allow us to keep more food in our fridge, right?
Yeah,
but from a immune perspective, I mean, the next three studies we're going to go over, I mean, it just, intermittent fasting alone just has so many benefits for boosting your own immune system.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about improved immune regulation. So actually regulating all the immune factors. Various cells have to be produced. There have to be hormonal triggers happening throughout the body that get set off especially well when insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1, that we talked about last time on the show, when that goes down from fasting, that allows these processes to ramp up. And then so we're also talking about stimulating what we call cellular autophagy, which is basically recycling the cells that have any sort of damage, which happens in an immune load, like we have basically a viral load, like what we're seeing right now, or any immune compromised position in the body, as well as in an overfed state. So we can negate all these things by fasting, as well as genetic repair, and then insulin sensitivity as well. So we're ramping up the body, getting it ready, to go back to the boxing analogy, to really put it on its feet and put up its dukes, get ready for a fight.
Right. I love that. Growing up as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, the little guy with the two fists, that's what I think of. Yeah, there you go. The cool thing about cellular autophagy is it's been proven over and over again that a caloric deficit, so less calories in, causes the autophagy to go up. Now, if we're talking about bodybuilders and muscle mass, well, yeah, there's probably situations where you got to know your body type and what your output is. But if we're talking about strictly immune system and survival and boosting our immune system the best possible way we can, caloric deficit. So if you don't eat, your body, like you just said, all those beneficial things are going up. The immune system's going up, autophagy, genetic repair, insulin sensitivity is improving, which means your body is processing the blood sugar better. So there's nothing in any of that that doesn't bode well for the current situation.
Right. And further on that point, in a modern Western diet, we're typically, many of us are typically in the overfed state. We may not be thinking about it that way, but the fact that we need fasting to reverse those trends means that we are overfed. That means that the body is actually being taxed by the amount of food that we're intaking all the time. And that's a different perspective than if you would have asked me that question a few years ago, before I kind of saw the light and found the solution. But that's what's happening in the body. So every bit of resource and energy that it's putting towards taking in overfeeding means that something else has to suffer. And unfortunately, it tends to be the immune system as just one of the systems that suffers.
Right. And we'll talk in a minute about the innate versus adaptive immune system when it comes in regards to vitamin D. Vitamin D, to switch gears a little bit, and I just want to say this one more time, we are not immunologists, but we do have experience in physiology and biology, et cetera. So this stuff, makes sense to us when we, are putting the pieces together, especially when it comes from a fasting perspective, because as we just went over, all of the benefits that come with intermittent to extended fasts. So yeah, switching gears just a little bit, a couple other things that we found really interesting in regards to, if you look back at the flu pandemic of 1918, 1919, there was a really cool study about UVB rays, so sunlight, and the vitamin D production in the body. Now, if you look at today's studies with vitamin D, there's definitely vitamin D has a vast effect. It's actually been called a hormone in certain situations. It has a vast effect on the innate and adaptive immune system. So what does your body innately have? And then what does your body do under a stress, or how does it adapt? It has beneficial effects, vitamin D does, on both of those. So the cool thing was the flu pandemic of 1819, the difference between where you were located and the fatality rates.
Yeah, so what they did find was the higher up you were, latitude-wise, the worse off you were as far as your fatality rates. So going from Connecticut all the way down to San Antonio, Texas, there was a 4-fold difference, being that it was 4 times less fatal to be in the southern areas where you were exposed to the highest levels of UVB radiation, because it turns out that the transmission of the flu was that much less likely in those higher UVB areas.
And there is a flaw in that study. Vitamin D had not yet been discovered then, but they did correlate it to the UVB exposure. So why we're bringing this up is, yes, you can fast, right? It's going to relieve some of the stress of having to worry about food. You're going to get the immune boosting effects of it. I know this when we had this challenge, we did our 7-day challenge back in February. And, we had one person that was in the challenge and she ended up getting sick, and she reached out and said, what do you think we should do? And I said, well, personally, I would continue to fast, because she had an infection. And then she was like, I responded very conservatively and said, well, if you follow what your doctor says, if you have medication, go ahead and do it. You might want to think about waiting. And she's like, well, I was reading some articles about how fasting boosts the immune system and helps with these types of infections. So I'm just going to push through. And she pushed through and crushed it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
she felt great about it. She was happy she did.
She was so happy. And I was like, yeah, that's what I should have said. So I joked next time I saw her in person, we had a meeting and we had a coaching session. I was like, yeah, I know. I should have just said that, because that's what you ended up doing anyway, because that's what I would have done. So boost your immune system, fasting, vitamin D. Why are we talking about this one? Well, get outside. In today's world, everyone's like talking about, all right, what shows can I binge? I'm quarantined. And by the way, there's no quarantine where we are. I don't like the word quarantine. Yes, keep your distance. Don't be high-fiving and hugging and kissing everybody you see on the street. Like, that makes sense to me. But don't just sit inside. Get outside, go out, take the dogs for a walk around your neighborhood, go to the park.
Right.
If you're in an area, for instance, that you can't, you're not allowed to leave the house, you're allowed to go outside.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. So get some sunlight, get some exposure. It's going to be good for everyone to get out of the house anyway. And then, with the flu pandemic study of 1918 and 1919, that fourfold decrease in fatality rates was just amazing from New London, Connecticut to San Antonio. So get outside, get some vitamin D. And I supplement with vitamin D every day. Our kids supplement with vitamin D. In the winter, I take 10,000 units. In the summer, I take 5,000 units. If you know what your vitamin D levels are, great. If you don't, that amount is not going to hurt you. And we did vitamin D testing in one of the clinics I worked in Naples, Florida, right? Naples, Florida, sunny Naples, Florida, right? Everybody's outside all the time.
Right.
75% of the people that walked in were still vitamin D deficient. Now,
oh, wow.
There's a whole nother level of stuff there, but the bottom line is, the vitamin D effect on the innate and adaptive immune system is enormous. The higher the vitamin D levels, the better immune system functions.
Wow. I like this next one, because the next one was something else that's actionable.
This was so cool.
So this was a Mayo Clinic study. They looked at preschoolers, and they gave half the school humidifiers in the winter, and then half they did not give them humidifiers. Then they tracked flu rates, and what they found was in the humidified group, that half of the school, their absenteeism rate dropped by 66% through the flu season, through the wintertime.
2/3.
So 2/3 just for having that humidifier that they were using at home. Basically, put this in the bedroom, sleep with it on, that's it. A very simple step, because it turns out that a 50% relative humidity rate is your optimal way to keep the flu transmission to a minimum. That is the best way to cut down on flu transmission as far as relative humidity goes, 50%.
So I realize this. We have humidifiers. We live in Houston, so it's very humid in the summertime. But in the winter, it does get dry. And I did not know there was such a strong correlation between drier climates and the flu transmission. I didn't know. You just Google it, and it was like research article after article after article after article that came up. And this was the Mayo Clinic study, like you mentioned. But we found some others that are specifically related to the 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak. And then there was one from 10 years ago that was the SARS corona family of viruses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, the same numbers came up, 40 to 60% humidity, 40 to 60% moisture in the air based on relative humidity. And there was article after article after article, research article proving HVAC studies and all these other things that the viruses can't live on surfaces nearly as long in the rooms that had this 40 to 60% or 50% rate of moisture. So that just reaffirmed, what we had read about the humidifier study that was done in the classrooms, but there's also ones out there that have been done in hospitals. So Something simple that you can absolutely do is, get a humidifier, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if you are really wanting to take it to the next level, get a little hygrometer, 10, $20, and you can see what the humidity level is. Some of the newer, like the Nests and the EcoBees and things like that, some of those will give you humidity levels as well. So you can definitely track that. Look to kick it up a notch and try to hit for that. Try to aim for that 50% range.
In a real life, because in today's world, I feel like the term science and knowledge and the whole world of research is kind of lost its way a little bit, in that science is not just research articles, right? Scientific method involves observational studies, deductive and inductive reasoning, reproducibility, so on and so forth. But I know a real life example for me, so more of a case study observational thing, is this year we ran the humidifiers in both our kids' rooms every night. It was just part of our routine, where last year we didn't do that. We only ran on the nights that we felt where the little one might not have been 100%.
Oh, okay.
And we've had 0 infections this year. 0. No breathing, no coughing, no sniffling, nothing. And we have a 10-month-old and a 3-year-old that goes to daycare 4 days a week. Okay. So, observational study there to reaffirm what we saw here. I didn't know what a hygrometer was. And I know some of the new HVAC systems actually have humidifiers in the HVAC, installation of the home. So much more expensive than just your standard. But yeah, so if you don't have one of the Nest or Smart ones, go ahead and get a hygrometer. It's $10. So this was something that obviously is not directly related to fasting, but it's something actionable that you can do to help, if we are at home, to help the environment, and the environment you're living in, the air you're breathing, to be optimal for, staying healthy and keeping that immune system that you're going to be improving with fasting and vitamin D and getting outside. You're going to just improve it even more with another, another source of stability there and control.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to further that point a little bit, when you feel like you're a little bit more in control and you've done something actionable that is gonna be a little bit more optimal than whatever the circumstances were before, like doing the humidifier, doing a hygrometer, getting more sunlight, all these things, that relieves some stress. When you relieve that stress, it's easier to say, okay, what are my fasting goals? What do I want to do? Do I want to do a 48-hour fast right now? Do I want to go for a 5-day fast? Whatever it may be. Whereas the opposite of that situation is sitting around hearing the news, getting worried, being stressed, and then most likely maybe doing some stress eating, going into kind of a quarantine rabbit hole where you're sitting on the couch, you're eating you're watching Netflix, eating some snacks. That's the exact opposite of control and regaining your health and your life back with fasting. So that's where it all kind of ties in, and why we wanted to address all these things.
Yeah, and it's, we're going to ask for, if this isn't landing for you, like if you came here for some more fasting tips and tricks and we're all talking about the coronavirus, and bear with us, we appreciate your patience, but we really felt it was important to talk about it in light of what it is that we're doing in our main goal, like you said. So less worry, less money spent, the better benefits. Your immune system will be functioning better. Your food in your freezer will last longer. Now, I'm not saying get your kids fasting, feed them, right?
No, yeah, of course.
But, for us, I've still got, I know I made a mention to a friend the other day. I said, he was asking, he's like, hey, how are you guys doing? I'm like, we're great. He's like, yeah, we're up here, we're in Massachusetts. And he was telling me about things that were going on via text. And I said, I'm not worried. I got at least 60 days of food right around my midsection.
Yeah.
And he just laughed and he's like, I still got a 6-pack. I was like, yeah, but you're not at 4%. You still have some. You could give me a couple weeks without it. And not to be doomsday, but the other thing is, everything always recovers. The markets recover, society recovers, people recover. We've got this. Hopefully this brought you, us going down this path, some clarity, some things you can do, again, regain that control. And we are going to get through it. Absolutely. Just watching the trends, which I do, we're not out of the woods yet, but we're making progress. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll keep taking it every day, looking for those ways to, empower you guys and bring you guys some good actionable steps. So let us know if there's anything in particular on your mind. Send us a note, check out the website, drop us a line, info@thefastingforlife.com, and tell us what's on your mind, and or drop us a Facebook line, and we can address it here too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm gonna go on my professional page too, Tommy. Just thinking of this in the moment, and just do a kind of an overview of immune boosting. I shouldn't say boosting, because technically that's not what we're doing. We're immune function or immune support things you can do to help with that. So I may give a couple more tips on what we do on a day-to-day basis, not specifically around kind of the situation that we're in now, but in terms of like vitamin C and, foods and those types of things. But everything that we wanted to go over today, man, I feel really good about it. I'm hoping that it's, going to empower some people out there. So drop us a line, like Tommy said, and you guys be safe and be blessed.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
See ya.
Bye. So you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.